Welcome, dear listeners, to our journey into the literary masterpiece. The Secret History has captivated readers since its publication, and tonight we explore this dark tale. I invite you to make yourself comfortable as we delve into this fascinating narrative, a perfect companion for your evening relaxation. The story begins with a young man named Richard Pappas, who arrives at Hampton College in Vermont with dreams and ambitions. Richard becomes instantly fascinated by a small, exclusive group of classic students. They stand apart from the rest of the student body, enigmatic and aloof in their pursuit of knowledge. These 5 students study exclusively under an eccentric professor named Julian Morrow, who teaches ancient Greek and cultivates an atmosphere of intellectual elitism. Richard observes them from afar, captivated by their apparent sophistication and their detachment from ordinary college life. Their world seems to promise something beyond the mundane reality that Richard has known throughout his life. The group consists of Henry Winter, the unofficial leader, brilliant and detached with an intimidating intellect; Francis Abernathy, wealthy and elegant, with his distinctive style and nervous mannerisms; the twins, Charles and Camilla Macaulay, beautiful and inseparable, with their fair hair and graceful presence. Finally, there is Edmund Bunny Corcoran, loud and intrusive, yet somehow integral to their closed circle. Richard becomes determined to join their ranks, to transcend his ordinary California background and reinvent himself among these disciples of classical thought. Julian Morrow has cultivated in these students a reverence for ancient Greek civilization. They study not merely the language, but the philosophy and rituals of a world long past. Their education extends beyond conventional academics into a realm where beauty and morality intertwine in ways that modern society has forgotten. The professor encourages them to see themselves as separate from their contemporaries, as guardians of a precious intellectual tradition. This isolation sets the stage for events that will spiral beyond anyone's control. Richard manages to impress Julian with his knowledge of Greek. He is admitted into the selective class despite initial resistance from the group. This acceptance marks the beginning of Richard's transformation and his complicity in what follows. As he becomes integrated into their world, Richard discovers that these students have been engaging in activities far beyond ordinary academic pursuits. There are secrets beneath their scholarly veneer, explorations into ancient Dionysian rituals meant to transcend normal consciousness. Little does Richard know that these experiments have already led to consequences that will haunt them all. The crucial events of our story begin in autumn. The group had been attempting to recreate a bacchanal, an ancient Greek ritual dedicated to Dionysus. Henry had become obsessed with achieving the ecstasis, a state of transcendence described in classical texts. Their previous attempts had been unsuccessful, despite extensive research and preparation. The group decided to try again during a weekend at Francis' country house, isolated in the countryside away from prying eyes. Richard was excluded from this particular experiment. The others never fully explained why he could not participate in this critical event. Henry later revealed that they had finally succeeded in reaching the Dionysian state. a moment of complete dissolution of individual consciousness. In this altered state, removed from normal human limitations and morality, something terrible occurred. The group encountered a farmer while dancing in their trance-like condition. In their frenzy, they fell upon the stranger with shocking violence. The aftermath brought horror and disbelief to the group. They had committed the ultimate transgression, taking a human life during their ritual madness. Henry took control of the situation with his characteristic cold logic. He insisted they must conceal what happened to protect their futures. Bunny was not present during the bacchanal, but learned about it afterwards. His reaction differed from the others, displaying neither Henry's pragmatism nor the twins' silent horror. The situation reached its breaking point during a spring hiking trip. Henry organized an outing to a ravine area, carefully planning the encounter with Bunny. The group positioned themselves strategically along the trail where Bunny would be walking alone. When he appeared on the path above them, Henry gave a signal. They emerged suddenly before the unsuspecting Bunny and pushed him over the steep edge. His death was disguised as a tragic hiking accident, beginning a new phase of their collective guilt. The psychological landscape of these characters reveals complex motivations. Each member of the group approaches their participation in the crimes with distinct perspectives and coping mechanisms. Henry views their actions through a classical lens, almost as a philosophical experiment in morality beyond conventional boundaries. This detachment allows him to orchestrate their collective actions with disturbing clarity and precision. Francis responds with nervous anxiety and physical manifestations of guilt, often retreating to his family wealth for comfort. The twins Charles and Camilla present a unified front initially. Their bond seems unbreakable in the early narrative, a symbol of their removal from normal relationships. As pressure mounts following their crimes, this connection begins to fracture in revealing ways. Charles turns to alcohol to suppress his mounting guilt, while Camilla develops a complicated attachment to Henry. Richard observes these changes with the perspective of both insider and outsider, his narrative position allowing readers intimate access to the psychological deterioration. The novel explores the dangerous territory where intellectual pursuits disconnect from moral anchoring. Julian teaches his students to value beauty and ancient wisdom above conventional morality. This aesthetic philosophy creates a framework where normal ethical boundaries become fluid and negotiable. The students' isolation within their classical studies creates an echo chamber where they reinforce their sense of exceptionalism. They come to believe themselves above the rules governing ordinary people, justified by their intellectual pursuits. The narrative structure employs a confession format that creates unique tension. Richard tells the story after everything has concluded, knowing the tragic outcomes awaiting each character. This retrospective approach allows him to analyze events with the benefit of hindsight while maintaining suspense for readers. The winter setting of Vermont creates an atmosphere of isolation and beauty that mirrors the character's psychological state. Snow frequently appears as both literal barrier and metaphorical blank slate, covering evidence and creating false purity over their increasingly dark actions. The consequences of their actions reverberate through their formerly insulated world. FBI investigators arrive on campus following Bunny's death, disrupting their carefully constructed facade of normalcy. The group struggles to maintain consistent stories as questioning intensifies and suspicions grow. Their reactions to this external pressure reveal further character dimensions. Henry remains coolly logical, while others begin to crumble under scrutiny. Charles' drinking accelerates dangerously, and Francis develops debilitating panic attacks that require medication. Julian eventually discovers the truth about his students. His reaction proves devastating to these young people who sought his approval and guidance. Rather than helping them confront their moral failings, he simply withdraws completely from their lives. This abandonment by their mentor becomes another form of punishment, perhaps more psychologically damaging than legal consequences would have been. They lose not only their teacher, but the philosophical framework that had given meaning to their studies. The lingering impact on Richard forms the emotional core of the conclusion. Years later, he still dreams of his former friends and the brief period when he believed he had found his intellectual home. He achieved his desire to transform himself and escape his ordinary background, but at devastating cost. The classical education that promised transcendence led instead to permanent alienation. He carries the knowledge of these events like an invisible mark, separating him from ordinary people who have never crossed such boundaries. The secret history endures as a powerful exploration of privileged intellectual communities. It examines how the pursuit of knowledge without ethical grounding can lead to moral collapse. The novel has influenced an entire subgenre called dark academia, stories set in elite educational institutions where intellectual pursuits lead to dangerous outcomes. Readers continue to be fascinated by this inverted mystery, where we know the criminals from the beginning, but watch their psychological unraveling. The enduring appeal lies in its examination of universal questions about morality, beauty, and the consequences of believing oneself exempt from human limitations.